We're here with Tina Fordham. She is Citigroup's global chief political analyst. Tina, thanks for joining us today.
Greetings from Brexit Britain.
So, Tina, Donald Trump ran a populist campaign. Based on his first 68 days in office, would you say he's governing as a populist?
Well, I mean, first of all, nerd that I am, and someone who's written a lot about populism, I think the term is being thrown around quite a bit. I mean, if we say he ran as an anti-elitist, then yes, he's continuing with that. I think that what's different about him, perhaps than other even Republican populists, is that he's really not trying so hard to appeal across the base of the whole party. It's to his core supporters. It's to Trump supporters. So that's what we see so far. Not much has surprised me about the policies that he's chosen. We talked about the factors that would lead to early action from the president. We saw the executive order on climate change. But some of the surprises, like the failure in the House last week, do underscore, I think, that he's not a traditional Republican.
He's not a traditional Republican, but he also hasn't been able to get anything done legislatively. And the people that he has surrounding him don't necessarily have any ideological coherence. You have people like Gary Cohn on one end and also Peter Navarro. What does this say about the general prospects of him to be able to move significant legislation and change the nature of U.S. policy?
Well, of course, as we know, U.S. presidency, the office of the presidency, the executive branch, is relatively weak. So it's Congress that makes legislation. I think that President Trump, with his executive style, has been probably a bit taken aback at how, unlike a CEO who can line up his deputies and say, this is, make it happen, it doesn't work that way. Members of Congress are always keen to show their independence, even when they're from the same party. And this is where markets often misread it, right? Of course, prospects for major reforms like tax reform are probably better now in principle than they've been for some time. But the fractions within the party, the fact that we, of course, have elections again in 2018, midterms, mean that it's just not that simple.
All right, so we have what's going on in the United States, and of course there are the upcoming elections in France and Germany as well. Beyond all of that, what would you say are the next hotspots for populism around the globe?
Well, if we're going to answer that question, we've got to sort of define a little bit what we think populism means. I don't think it's a particularly right-wing phenomenon, although it's often described that way. We're kind of at a time in electoral democracies where the terms left and right themselves don't mean very much. Authoritarian populism is something that's been studied by YouGov and the University of Essex, and those features include lack of support for human rights, for gender rights, demand for strong leadership, and more economic intervention, so protectionism. So I think what we mean in markets when we think about populism, we mean political outcomes that might lead to more economic intervention and disruption at the primary level. What I look at, and when we went down our road of looking at what we called Vox Populi risk, is other factors. I'm particularly interested in what I call the soft drivers of this phenomenon, and those things include really a lot to do with unease about globalization, so the pace of change, particularly technological change, cultural identity, which manifests itself with unease about immigration, for example. So there's a lot more going on, in my view, than just the economics.
So are there
when we think about where, so to answer your question specifically, for Europe, and this has become an advanced economy phenomenon, but really it's U.S. and Europe. It's important to look at where we don't see populism in the advanced economies, like Canada. Japan, Australia, New Zealand really aren't, showing this populist juggernaut. I think in Europe, many people worried about Italy, the five-star movement, now at the top of the polls, and elections have to come in Italy by 2018. But I wanted to make an observation, if I could, about how I also think this this theme in politics is evolving, so that both the Five Star Movement in Italy and Marine Le Pen's National Front have both taken off of their party platforms the rhetoric about a referendum on the euro. And that's what really worries investors the most about all of this. It's the risk of euro disintegration. So maybe have some aspects of this agenda peaked.
That leads right into my next question. If you're advising the leaders of the more mainstream centrist parties, whether in Europe, the US, or elsewhere, what are the things that they should be doing to regain credibility and to stave off some of these populist pressures?
Well, I mean, the temptation has been to have more referendums and to bring back power to the people and to kind of make up for the perceived democratic deficit or lack of legitimacy of officials by going to the people. Interestingly, there's some very recent data that said that the public is tired of referendums. They're very disruptive. So I wonder if that moment has peaked as well. I think any economist would tell you bring back growth. Well, the interesting observation is that both the US and the UK at the time of those votes, growth was pretty decent. And likewise here in Europe, growth is better than it's been in years. And yet here we are worrying about what might happen in French elections, whether they might bring in the National Front. But to kind of get closer to your question, it will be very interesting to see if Emmanuel Macron in France wins with his En Marche movement, which is dead centrist, right? He is taking votes from both sides. So we've got that signpost to kind of test out whether being centrist and slightly repackaging as an outsider, as Macron has, despite having served as a member of the socialist government, does it work? Likewise, Martin Schulz, who's giving Merkel a run for her money in Germany, a career politician and an EU bureaucrat, hardly the new kid on the block. And while he's not the favorite to win, there has been a real spike in support for him. So it's not just the firebrands. It really does seem to be a desire to disrupt the status quo.
All right, Tina, final question to you, and you can answer this any which way you want. Who or what wins from the rise of populism? Who or what loses from the rise of populism?
Well, that's what makes it so devilishly difficult for investors, because even in strict authoritarian regimes, somebody's making money and somebody benefits. One of the things that I think we have to expect, particularly as we have these 4 rounds, as we talked about in the French elections, right? It's 2 elections, but with 4 elections in them, is volatility. So volatility is one of the key manifestations, at least in markets. Entrenched elites are the winners, and we go back to a time when it seems to be acceptable to reward supporters, even outright nepotism, things that were politically incorrect for some time. So more time will be spent, I think, gaming out ownership, who knows who's close to him, more kissing the ring, and these kinds of things that have been less a part of commercial political relations in advanced economies for some time.
All right, Tina Fordham, Citigroup's global chief political analyst, joining us from London. Thank you so much.